$1.4 billion to deal with the tens of thousands of immigrant children. At present, they have shockingly few resources. On Tuesday, the chairman of the Migrant Committee of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, a group that has been assisting in the situation, said these children are refugees who deserve the protection of our nation. They should not be viewed as lawbreakers. Joining me now from San Antonio is the executive director for the Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services, Jonathan Ryan, and Washington bureau chief for BuzzFeed, John Stanton. Jonathan, tell us, if you can, what has led to this dramatic increase of children coming alone across our borders?
Well, I think quite simply the reason is that things have gotten worse in Central America. Children, people in general, but above all children, they usually don't voluntarily seek to leave their homes. And these are children who are being pushed out in large numbers because they've been victims of abuse in their homes, in the towns and cities where they live, at the hands of drug cartels and criminals, and for them it's a situation of leave or die, quite frankly.
But I mean, the numbers that we are talking about here are staggering. In the past 8 months, 47,000 children have been apprehended at the southwest border. Jonathan, what does that look like? I mean, we talk about humanitarian crises, and we often talk about them as if they are over there. This is happening right here in the United States.
It is happening here, and it has actually been happening for quite a long time. Our agency has been involved in this work officially since 2008, but many have been doing this for over a decade, and it's a situation that has increasingly become worse in the home countries and is leading to larger and larger numbers of children fleeing from their homes and seeking protection here in the United States.
John Stanton, you've done a lot of work and great reporting from the border, and it is a dismal situation over there. I wonder what you make of the president's latest request for $1.2 or $3 billion to house and feed and generally deal with the tens of thousands of children who are now inside our borders. Is there any likelihood that the Republicans in Congress will cooperate?
I think that there is. I think, right now they're trying to take a bit of a pound of flesh. Jeff Sessions, for instance, a few minutes ago put out a statement saying that President Obama is personally responsible for the situation and blaming what he calls lax enforcement for this sort of flood of children at the border. I'm not sure, it seems a little too late. This is, as Jonathan said, an issue that has been coming up more and more the last few years. I think folks on the border certainly saw it coming. I was just there recently talking to lawyers representing some of these children who said that in some cases they were being held in a large detention room where they didn't have beds. They only had one toilet for days on end before they were being sent to places where they actually had a bed to sleep in. And it's been a crisis for quite a while, and it's good that they're starting to try to address it, but it seems a little late.
Jonathan, Mother Jones has some terrifying and desperate statistics that I want to share. In 2011, there were 53 facilities holding 6,560 children. In 2013, there were 80 facilities to house nearly 25,000 children. How are they being cared for? I mean, what practically does that situation look like? John Stanton just said, there aren't enough beds. I mean, who is taking care of these children?
Well, I think, to be clear, we're talking about two different issues. One is at the border, the children being held in detention centers that are really created for adults. And so those are detention centers in which the conditions are quite difficult for the children, very low temperatures. In terms of the regularity of receiving meals or getting access to telephones, it's very limited. DHS has 72 hours to get the children out of their custody and into Health and Human Services custody, where the children are placed in shelters where they have access to a wider array of services such as medical, education, they have counseling, and the shelters, for example, where we work, have access to lawyers who can provide the children with what we call a Know Your Rights presentation, where we explain to them more or less what their rights are in this process, and where we provide them legal screenings to hopefully identify children who have been trafficked into the United States or who have been persecuted or tortured in their home countries.
John Stanton, by a treaty that the U.S. has with Mexico, unaccompanied minors are returned back to Mexico. We don't have an agreement with many Central American countries, especially the ones that are seeing this exodus of children. Is it your sense, from the reporting that you've done on the issue of immigration, that there is more intention on the part of the White House to reach out to those countries and deal with this problem at the root?
I have not seen a whole lot of that, no. I think that there is this sort of effort to try to send them back when they can, but there is not certainly any effort at this point, doesn't seem like, to really expedite that. I would be surprised if we saw any sort of new treaty or other sorts of bilateral agreements in the near future. I think, with the Mexican children, it's a little easier, but also you don't have as many Mexican children, as you say, as from places like El Salvador or Honduras, where they get sent back, and oftentimes they're going to turn around and try to come back. When you're on the border, you'll meet people that have done this trek multiple times already, and I think for a lot of these children, they're going to be faced with the same difficult situation they were in, even if they were to be sent back immediately.
Yeah, and Jonathan, you has an editorial out today talking about the searing indictment that this represents of our broken immigration system. The fact that these children travel, as John Stanton points out, sometimes multiple times under terrifying, life-threatening conditions to make it here, to be turned back, to come back over again. I mean, something clearly needs to be done here.
Well, yes, and I want to address, I think a lot of people, because we are engaged in an immigration debate currently, it's very easy to fit this into that framework. But what we are really dealing with here is a humanitarian crisis and a refugee crisis. We speak with thousands of children a year, and they're not aware that they're involved in any kind of a mass movement. They've got individual and particular stories, traumatic stories, that push them out of their home countries. They would rather be at home. They don't want to be here. Indeed,
I think it is right to use the phrase humanitarian catastrophe to describe this. Jonathan Ryan and John Stanton, thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up.